all these people on time. It's a good thing to be.
All right, so we might have some more people join as we go along, but thank you all for coming today. We're so grateful to have such a great crowd, and we're especially grateful to have Michele Weldon with us today and Kathy Adducey as well. So thank you both so much. I just want to mention one upcoming event before we get started, which is a week from Wednesday on the 18th. We are going to have a program where you can learn how to make some hors d'oeuvres ahead of Thanksgiving. I know it might be different this year, but I'm sure we'll all still want to make some nice food at home. So we'd love to have you join for that. And we'll have Chef Michael Maddox with us that day. So I wanted to make sure to bring it to your attention because we'd love to have you. But without further ado, we'll get to the main event because I know that's why you're all here and so excited to get started. So Kathy, I will turn it over to you. Thank you so much for coming today.
Okay, well, thank you. I'm thrilled to be part of this. And when Michele asked me to introduce her to this group, I said, absolutely, it is my honor to be part of this. And then she gave me her bio and she said, well, you could kind of shorten it in any way you want. And I looked at it and read it and I'm like, there's no place to shorten it. It's so amazing. So I am going to read her bio because it is an amazing bio. And I'm honored to read it and be part of this wonderful book discussion. So Michele Weldon is an award-winning author, journalist, and emerita faculty in journalism at Northwestern University, where she taught on the undergraduate and graduate levels for 18 years. She is the author of 6 nonfiction books, including her latest, Act Like You're Having a Good Time essays. She has contributed chapters in 7 other books. Born and raised in River Forest, she has been living in River Forest again since 1996. Her first book, I Close My Eyes, was reprinted in 7 languages and was featured with the author on the Oprah Winfrey Show in 2002. She recently won a 2020 Peter Lisagor Award from the Chicago Headline Club for Best Essays for essays that appear in her latest book. Her essays appeared in New York Times, CNN, Washington Post, The Guardian, Chicago Tribune, Forbes, USA Today, and scores more. She has delivered more than 200 keynotes and appeared on TV, radio, and digital outlets globally. A senior leader with the Op-Ed Project since 2011, she has led Public Voices Fellowship initiatives at Northwestern, Stanford, Princeton, Brown, Loyola DePaul, and Rush Universities, the Ms. Foundation, the McCormick Foundation, Boone Family Foundation, Center for Global Policy Solutions, and Urgent Fund Africa. She is the award-winning editorial director of the Take the Lead, a global women's leadership initiative, and received a 2020 Chicago Journalist Award for Best Independent Blog for her work there in 2019. She's a graduate of Oak Park High School and also Northwestern University with a bachelor's in. She serves on the advisory boards of Global Girl Media Chicago, Sarah's Inn, Beat the Streets Chicago, Between Friends, and Children's Foundation. She's a former member of the board of directors of Journalism and Women's Symposium and is the mother of 3 wonderful sons. Let me introduce you our very own Michele Weldon. Michele?
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, Kathy. And I see a lot of my friends from River Forest, but if you're not familiar, Kathy is the president of the village of River Forest. So I am really grateful for you, Kathy, because your leadership shows that women should rule the world. You're deliberate and calm, intelligent, transparent, accessible. I'm so appreciative of you. Everything has improved about living here because of you. So thank you. And we're gonna have time for questions in the end. So though Kathy is here, please don't ask Kathy questions about the deer population, garbage collection, or the stop signs. So thanks very much. I'm also really grateful to you, Megan, and the River Forest Library, because that growing up here, that was where I learned to be a reader. And I used to go downstairs in the section for children and take out as many books as I possibly could. I remember loving Ramona Quimby and Nancy Drew, and my sister Madeline, who's on the call here, taught me how to read when I was about 4 or 5. because we used to play Barbies or dolls or school. And man, I learned to read before kindergarten. So I'm grateful to Madeline for that. So thank you all for being here. I appreciate you very, very much. Thank you. So I want to talk a little bit about why I called this book Act Like You're Having a Good Time. Whether you have read the book or not, you may know that is what my father used to say to the six of us. I'm the youngest of six in less than 8 years. And we were not allowed to refuse to do anything ever. We were always reminded that it was our obligation and we needed to do what we were told to do. So whenever we fussed or said, you know, I don't know, I don't really want to do that chore, my father would just say, well, then just act like you're having a good time. So it wasn't about faking it really or being unauthentic. It was about making the most of everything that you need to do and being aware of your blessings and what you are given. So I want to take a moment and read from the first chapter here, which is called Roots. And in this chapter, I write about the house that I live in. All these photos framed on every surface, the baptisms, the first communions, the confirmations, any and all of the sacraments, Brendan receiving his university diploma, Weldon, Colin too, and the weddings of friends and family where I'm smiling, sometimes happy, sometimes just going through the motions, the stage photos by the fireplace that took maybe 15 shots to get right, the family parties, the vacations when they were little, and when I sometimes wish there was another adult to at least carry the bags. Here is this life. Here is where we spent the afternoons, the mornings, the late nights. We shared the dinners of favorite meals around the breakfast room table with the green chairs. I wiped the marinara sauce off the floor, the splatters of oil off the wall near the stove. The times we were all in sync, caught on the same high wire act, even if it's just for a split second when you see all the same view and it is glorious. The times when unspeakably cruel things were said, some denied, most assumed forgotten. The broken promises, the shattered expectations, but sometimes, many sometimes, for a nanosecond, you collide in the same messy and delicious memory before each one splits into its own version of the snapshot and is never the same view again at all. The laughter. Sometimes I hear the laughter in my head. Brendan's imitations, Weldon's jokes, Colin's guffaw that is loud and infectious. I understand how I am manufactured. I acknowledge how I am built, with full-on inhabitants of emotion that grants me at times a sadness so life-size it gives me hives and a throat-tightening despair when I'm hurt or afraid. I also see how a small gesture can shift to rapture, over a butterfly in the back steps or a text from Weldon that makes me laugh out loud. I know how I connect to the places that define me. This place defines me. It defines us. It exists because and in spite of me and exists for my sons. They had a home, a solid home they could come to, they will come to, and where they can stay. We belong here. So that's about, you know, living in River Forest and in this home I've been in for 25 years now, and I just got a new roof, so it's greatly improved. You may have seen that sign on my lawn. So I also want to talk a little bit about why I wrote a book of essays, because a lot of people ask me that, because it is a completely different genre than my other books. I do write nonfiction. I thankfully will never publish fiction because I tried once. I wrote about 120 pages of a novel, and my beloved writing group were like, you know, not so much. You should really not continue here. It was really terrible. And I would say things like, I don't know how to make up dialogue. I only know how to write what has really happened. So I would have this dialogue and it would say like, stop it, he said menacingly. And a good friend said to me, you know, you need to have action happen in a book. Like, you can't just always have people sitting around talking. It's like, really? Like, yeah, there's action usually. So so I don't write fiction. But essays are a different animal than you know, a nonfiction narrative with an arc of a beginning, middle, and end. And it's a very corny story of when I started publishing essays. I was writing for Pioneer Press, for Oak Leaves and Forest Leaves, when I was 13. I wrote teen features and op-eds and opinion pieces. I you know, interviewed people who, you know, teenagers at Oak Park High who were, you know, making movies or doing interesting things. And I was paid, so this was like 1971 when I started doing that. And I was paid $25 an article. So in 1971, that was a lot. You know, my friends would have to babysit for like 50 hours to earn that much money. And here I was. So I thought, this is a pretty good gig. So I have been writing essays for newspapers and magazines for 40 years professionally. At Oak Park High, I was not on the newspaper or the yearbook. I was on the poetry magazine. So I really loved that. And then I went undergraduate and graduate to Northwestern in journalism, was an editor at the Daily Northwestern. And an interesting twist there is that we had our 40th reunion last year, and the Daily editors, campus paper editors, we're Zooming now every 2 weeks from all over the world, and it is wonderful. So I wanted to put together a collection of these essays, and then an agent said, because I've been writing them so long, I literally have thousands. I wrote, some of you may remember, I wrote for the Tribune for, I wrote weekly essays contributing there for about 20 years. So I'm like, I have tons of stuff. I just put them all together. And then an editor said, no, they have to be new. I was like, really? So then I started, you know, writing these essays, and I was thinking about, you know, there have to be a lot of other women like me in this third act of life who are trying to find purpose and meaning, and who don't find those how-to books really helpful, who don't find that because you throw out everything in your basement, you're going to be okay. And that if you just breathe deeply, you know, you'll be great. So I wanted to embrace like the confusion that I feel, and the insecurity and uncertainty, discovering what is meaningful at this time, and also to like confront my own ambitions and the reality that I'm not gonna do what I planned on because there's not that much time left. So I write about all those different things that I think are resonating with women and men my age. And I've discovered not just people my age, but also other people younger and even older. You know, I write about needing applause and affirmation and recognition, and how that might be a little odd, how much I need that. But you know, I try to be as honest as possible about that. I want to read a section that you might find amusing from the book. In a chapter about applause, I had a roller skating show in 1967 when I lived with my family at Jackson and Augusta. And yeah, I've been showing off since then. So this is from that chapter. It was the summer of 1967, and my task was to figure out how to design a curtain that would hang across the driveway on Augusta so no one would get a free peek. My across the street neighbor, Mary, who lived in the red brick house with her brothers and parents and grandparents, and I had produced, rehearsed, and choreographed our first ever roller skating show. It was an extravaganza that involved costumes and daredevil feats of each of us skating in circles and jumping over broom handles, a sort of obstacle course before this was a reality show thing. I was 9. We sold tickets for 50 cents each and promised that Mary's mom would be baking treats for the audience. She was probably the biggest draw. Her cookies and brownies were locally famous. She made a cake for the event and cut it into squares so people could eat it with their hands, no forks. In the weeks leading up to the roller skating show, Mary and I had gone door to door. She went down Jackson, I went down Monroe, knocking, ringing doorbells to sell the idea that this would be a demonstration of expertise, the likes of which our neighborhood had never seen. I think we sold about 20 tickets, and then we had to figure out how many people could fit on a picnic bench because we had 3 benches lined up under the basketball hoop. Our Saturday morning show was billed as so extraordinary that I imagined passersby would want to park and sneak a view without paying admission. There were no trees close enough to the driveway to hang up sheets to prevent non-paying customers from viewing the show. So I abandoned the idea of privatizing the driveway, even though it was a precursor to the idea of a paywall. Mary wore a clown costume and I wore a red lipstick I flitched from my mother's makeup drawer. The roller skating show featured Mary and me skating back and forth in the driveway, dipping and swaying on our quad skates for about 30 minutes to a selection of 45 spinning on the record player in the garage with the help of many, many extension cords. The audience of about 10 neighbors and siblings applauded heartily. I felt like Cher. Without the singing, flat stomach, or flimsy costumes, I was in the spotlight, so to speak, but people were looking at me and I was loving it, even if my sisters appeared bored. Mary's mother was in the audience. I think my mom watched from the window. It was just one more thing I was doing on a calendar of look at me events. I also one summer painted landscape scenes on small rocks and sold them from a stand in front of the house. The applause was good. I went to bed that night feeling deeply pleased with myself. Growing up, I did briefly think about how it might be if I were an only child, like my friend Jennifer, whose parents doted on her as if she was a princess. Jennifer had enormous stuffed animals in her bedroom, life-size dogs with floppy ears bigger than she was, and her mother kept checking on us if I went to her house on Park Avenue to play. Jennifer always had new clothes, not hand-me-downs like I had for my sister Madeline. Oh, not everything was handed down. I did get new clothes, but mostly my clothes were not mine first. Bikes either. I remember saying when I grow up, I'm just going to have a bike for myself, one that is new, not with scuffed tires, a faded leather seat, a worn basket. It will have a shiny bell and I will be the first one to ring it. I did get a new bike when I was 13. My father took me to the Sears at the corner of North and Harlem for it, and it was a bright yellow 10-speed, and I thought I was the coolest thing. In high school, I longed for attention and was a real suck-up to the teachers because it mattered to me that in a class of 30, yes, it was about 30 to a class back then, I wanted to be seen. I raised my hand a lot and said, oh, 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 when I knew the answer, madly waving at the teacher who mostly ignored me to give others a chance. I get that now, but at the time it only made me raise my hand more. My brother Paul told me once when I complained about not getting called on that I should try to trick the teacher and act bored, look around the room, pretend I was not paying attention, and then I would get called on. Paul said this was reverse psychology. It worked. I also want to remind you if you want to put questions in the chat that we can address those in a little bit. So, growing up in River Forest was definitely, I was quite lucky, quite blessed. And it was, a tight-knit community then, thinking back about it, because I felt like, all eyes were watching us. My parents would get reports about us, be like, oh, I saw Michele, she was at, Paul was doing this, or Bill was here. Mary Pat never did anything wrong. But we always got, checked up on, and people were always together in the grand scheme of trying to raise children who and families who were responsible in the world. So I really felt that then, and then moving back here 25 years ago and raising my sons here it feels similar, you know, on our block. You know, we always had block parties, not so much now this year, but block parties and Christmas parties with the whole block. And I feel that there is accountability to community here, and that is something that I'm really, really proud of, and proud to be part of this. And I also highly appreciate the quiet. So the older I get, you know, the more I can really appreciate that. So I'm really loving it living here, even though it's drastically changed since my roller skating driveway shows. My parents have both passed. My father passed in 1988, before any of my children were even born, and my mother passed in 2002. And I think about, you know, especially this event with the River Forest Public Library, where I had events for all of my earlier books. And my mother was there for the first two books that I published, and, you know, sitting in the front row and beaming. So I feel, you know, her presence all the time. And I also feel that her influence on my life and on my siblings' lives is really strong and perpetual. And she was always encouraging us, telling us we needed to be of service, telling us to whom much is given, much is expected. So, you know, I always have her voice playing in my head, you know, at certain times. And, you know, growing up, like so many people, I also, you know, came across a fair share of bullies and, you know, mean girls. And I think particularly I because I was younger than other people, I skipped second grade, as I said before, because Madeline taught me how to read before then. And so I was younger than everybody when they were in adolescence. But in this book, I write a lot about invisibility and also being hyper criticized. So one of those early experiences I had with a bully was when I was about 6 years old, and my mother's response was absolutely magnificent. So I want to read that for you here. If I tell you the title of the chapter, I'll give the whole thing away. I was born in the generation before they gave out trophies to preschoolers for showing up at soccer practices. My parents were conjoined in pumping each of us up with the expectation that we would succeed, never punishing us severely for failures, but always positively reassuring that it will just take time and practice. We were rewarded for trying. I never got better at the viola. I never got better at swimming or any other sport. I just moved on to other things. I guess when I realized I was not very good, actually, when I realized I was very bad. You eventually understand that what your parents adore in you is specifically why people think you are full of yourself. You are so full of yourself, Michele Weldon, a girl with freckles and a mean streak, said to me the summer of 1964 when I was 6. We were standing by the concrete side of the Riverside swimming pool one July afternoon, and I was going on and on about how I would be a famous writer one day after I had reached my peak as a famous ballerina. I was wearing my bright blue swimsuit, dipping my toe in the water with a swish and a splash, putting on my bathing cap with a snap. She squinted at me with disdain, waiting for my response. I stayed silent, wondering why would she be so mean? I had never been mean to her. She stormed off when I didn't cry or react the way she thought I would. I guess with an apology and an eruption of tears, but I just stared at her, thoroughly perplexed, wondering why would she say such a thing? Susan didn't talk to me the rest of the summer, or that afternoon, nor the 5 summers after that. It was awkward, and it did make me feel bad after all, but I never let on to her. I asked my mom about it later that night after the dishwasher was turned on, following dinner, and everyone had disappeared to their rooms or out to the backyard for the last gasps of a summer night. Well, why would you want to be empty of yourself? My mother asked. So I always feel like that's such a great thing. And I used to say that to my students in journalism at Northwestern, I would say the goal is you be completely full of yourself. So I acknowledge that this book is, you know, a lighter read in a terribly chaotic time. And I acknowledge that throughout the book. It's not solving the terrible problems, I do not ever mean to undermine, of the pandemic that has claimed hundreds of thousands of lives, and also the racial injustice that has sustained this crisis level and is unrelenting. And until just yesterday, you know, the tension from the election was so consuming and stressful and unrelenting. So I acknowledge all that has been taking up a lot of our brain and heart space. And hopefully this book inserts some sort of distraction or discovery in spite of all that. And also the news of wildfires and hurricanes and climate-related disasters seems to be happening, you know, every day and every week. So I was thinking at this time, why does a book like mine, written by, you know, a white woman of privilege that muses about personal issues and relevance, even deserve anyone's time or energy? And then I was hoping and diligently trying to make it more relevant and to be more honest and to touch on some of these issues. And some of you may know about the publishing cycle and how long it does take. So while this book was released in September, it was due in January. It was due January 15th of this year of 2020. The final book was due, and then final edits were due March 15th. And that was just, I had just that day come home from a business trip, not knowing, I was in Dallas where they were on lockdown, and not knowing that I would never travel again for the next 8 months, which is what has happened. So I begged my editor if she would let me add some more things to the book about COVID and about all the racial unrest and injustice that we are seeing in our country. And she allowed me to do that, which is what I'm really grateful for. So I added then this chapter on white privilege, because I feel that omitting that was kind of deceitful and not addressing the blind spots that I have in my life, and that growing up, as lucky as I was and as lucky as I continue to be, and my sons continue to be, would just be completely inauthentic and ridiculous not to address that. And while, you know, growing up as I have, so fortunate and blessed, I acknowledge I was completely oblivious to what was happening in the world. And while I continue to have blind spots, I really, and I never profess equivalency, I am more aware and am not just a bystander. So I hope you will indulge me and let me read from this chapter called Privilege. The year the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was killed, and Bobby Kennedy too, was the summer of 1968 riots in Chicago, just an L ride east from our house. The mayor of Chicago was Irish like us, the first Richard Daley, who was loud like my mother's uncles, and I didn't think he was so smart. His face was round and red, and he talked in clipped sentences in an accent that was nasal and harsh, like the Chicago winters, and full of dirty, salted snow. The evening news had all old white men, except for 38-year-old Barbara Walters, sitting at desks, talking through their glasses about Vietnam and police brutality. The April night after Dr. King was shot and it was on the TV news, my family said a prayer for Dr. King and his family in the living room after dinner when we said the rosary. He was a very good man, my father said. Of course, my father could have said more. about history and justice, racism and pain, and how privilege exempted us from all of that despair and anguish. Maybe he only wanted to delay what I would later learn was a world that was only accessible to those who are white with the automatic benefit of privilege. Maybe he was hoping it would be a while before I learned that presumptions and bias ruled your past, present, and future, and that it was not fair and that it was firm. I definitely could have learned more, inquired more, demanded more in grade school, in high school, and college to understand more about everyone in the world with their own proud cultural identities and what it meant, but I didn't. I raised my sons differently. I know empathy is a muscle you can stretch and fortify. There is no expiration date on learning more, doing more, and being a person who stands for fairness every day. What I craved when I watched Soul Train was what I witnessed as palpable Black joy, men and women seen and heard as they are, genuine in the moment, defined by the best possible perception of themselves. That I was so unforgivably myopic in my views when I should have seen what was in front of me, around me, everywhere, makes me cringe. To see difference only in terms of music is wildly offensive. I was involuntarily granted white privilege at birth and have reaped a lifetime of allowances and rewards because of it. I voluntarily use that privilege to influence a difference. The work I do sharing, endorsing, amplifying, and listening to the truth-telling of every person can hopefully affect change. I wish I was better. I am working on it. So I'm thinking maybe take a question, even though we are going to have full question and answer in a few minutes. Thinking I might take question here. Oh, there's take from the host. Kathy writes, what does living here in River Forest mean to you now? Well, I touched on that a little bit, and what it means to me now is a really safe, reliable place to live and work, because I'm working remotely as most everyone else who's a non-essential worker. And I'm highly appreciative of all the amenities here and all the access I have to resources that are just not available elsewhere. And also, you know, how beautiful it is here physically. And the relationships with neighbors and even, like, you know, village officials and our police are even friendly. For goodness sakes, like the guys who come on, well, my day is Tuesday to collect the garbage. They're even really friendly and nice. It's just, thinking back to all the traditions that are so River Forest, like the Memorial Day Parade and all those things that still continue, and will after COVID. I feel like it's a place to raise family where everyone has your back. So that's what it means for me. And, I raised my sons here and they are, trying to remember how old they are because we just had a birthday, 32, 29, and 26. And they know how lucky they are to have lived here and to have this legacy of inherited of place, and how important place is in forming your identity. So is that okay, Kathy? How does that feel? Good. Okay. And let me ask, hi, Marcia Oregon, who I've known, my goodness, since I was probably like 2. Can you compare River Forest when you're growing up versus today? Do you have a preference? Well, when I was growing up, I didn't have to pay for anything. So yeah. I know we have those taxes for a reason, Kathy. No, I'm not complaining. Though I do try to get them lowered. But anyway, as is my right. So I don't know, it felt, growing up, and you probably have the same experience, Marcia. Growing up, it was both really a tight place and also enormous, right? The church bells of St. Luke's felt like, St. Peter's Cathedral in Rome. And you know, just walking a block felt like walking 10 miles. So there's, you know, a thing about your childhood perceptions of place and then what it's really, really like. I feel that it is, how it has changed is that there's, you know, many more amenities. There are many more, you know, stores and options and so many different things available in the village. And, you know, the education is just magnificent from, you know, from Willard to Oak Park High, Willard to Roosevelt to Oak Park High for my sons. I don't think I could have done any better for them anywhere. So that is really important. And yeah, I feel really, and also now that I have my roof fixed, I'm really happy with my house here, because that was kind of a scary possibility. So Jamie, who I've also known for a really long time, do you know how your parents picked River Forest to have their family? My father was from the north side of Chicago. He was, you know, he went to Loyola Academy, and he was born and raised around Rogers Park. And my mother is from the west side of Chicago. And I guess her dream was always River Forest. So the first house they bought was 551 Clinton before I was born. And that's the, I don't know, you River Foresters might know, that was a Planes, Trains, and Automobiles house in that movie, which is kind of a fun fact, long after my family lived there. And then after, before I was born, they moved across the street. So yeah, and it just, you know, suited our needs. As I said, there's 6 of us in 8 years. So the, you know, taking advantage of all the amenities of the neighborhood was great. And my grandmother lived in Oak Park. So my mother's mother was always nearby and was always coming to our house. Barbara asked a question, who are your favorite essayists? Are there newly published essayists you enjoy? I think Roxane Gay is an unbelievable essayist. I just finished reading a book. It's not essays, but it's a memoir, Alicia Elliott, called A Mind Spread Out on the Ground. And that is really, really wonderful. Very close friend and member writing group with me for 20 years. Elizabeth Berg has a new book out where she writes about her parents, her aging parents, and when they passed. So that's also really good. I enjoy a whole lot of different writers. There's Ellen has a question. So Ellen asked about my first book. I Closed My Eyes. It was incredible. How did you get the courage to write it? When did you think about it, and how long did it take? Well, that was my, you know, for many of you who might not know and who don't know me or my work, that book came out in 1999. It was a memoir. I was married to a man who was physically violent. And yes, that took me 3 years to write. And when I look back on it now, and, you know, I sound all brave, like, yeah, that was just my first book. That was terrifying. How it started was I felt like a complete fraud because I was a columnist for the Chicago Tribune, a contributing columnist, and writing op-eds about how terrible domestic violence was and living with it. And when in 1995, when I finally stopped the charade and got an order of protection, I started writing about it. And I never thought I would publish it. And actually, a former friend who is a Pulitzer Prize winning journalist, and I say former because we're no longer friends, said, you write that book, you will have victim on your name tag for the rest of your life, so don't write that book. And I thought it was bigger than me. I thought that telling the truth was really, really necessary. So I first wrote what became the book. I wrote an essay and entered a national contest for Writer's Digest. I wrote the essay that was called I Closed My Eyes. That is the first chapter. And I won first place out of 20,000 submissions. So I thought, well, maybe this kind of matters. And then I worked on it in Stolen Moments. It took me 3 years to write, and sold it pretty quickly. And, I was even scared. I mean, there's so many things that happened. I was, terrified of having anyone know. And I remember, the publisher calling me, the book is coming out in a few months. And it was just called I Close My Eyes. And he said, well, we have to put a subtitle on it called Revelations of a Battered Woman. And I said, no, 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 no. And he said, why? And I said, well, because then people will know. So he said, well, you want people to know. So I argued with him and had him agree that it would not be on the spine, but it would be really small type on the cover. So, I mean, that's so ridiculous that I didn't want people to know. My argument with him was that Frank McCourt had just written Angela's Ashes. And I say, well, there's no subtitle there, Memory of a Really Terrible Irish Childhood. And he was like, well, we have to, say what the book is about. So I'll just say I was terrified before, during, and then shortly after the book came out. It's probably, and it has taken years for me to really own that and be proud of what has happened as a result, and all the people who have been helped. I see Kathy has a question here. Oh, you talk about it. I love the essay on swap. And if you haven't read the book, let me tell you what that is about. That's about the lie of work-life balance. Every working woman, and particularly, a working mother, is told that she needs to achieve. And if you do just one less thing, you'll be able to achieve it. Just say no. And I always felt like, wow, what do you choose between, like taking your kid to the doctor, or your mother to the doctor, or finishing your project? I always felt like that was so perilous, and the balancing was just destined for failure, because balancing meant you had to drop something. So I talk about in the book a chapter on and call it swapping, that you just choose things to do, and you don't make it about trying to hold it all at once and how terrible it is, and that you forgive yourself that you have to swap things. Here's from Megan. What is the main takeaway you hope readers will gain from this book? That you're okay as you are. I write a lot about am I enough? Will I ever be enough? In the business that I'm in, as a journalist and as an author, there are so many other enormous talents who are way better than I am at all of those things. And it's very rewarding to see, students I had 10, 15 years ago on network news and winning Pulitzer Prizes and getting enormous international recognition, and knowing that's never going to happen to me, right? There are things that I dreamed happening that will never happen to me. So it's coming from a place of authentic self-discovery, and that just sometimes asking the questions is enough. You may not have 10 answers tonight, but just think about them, and then forgive yourself, and know that you are enough, and that it's okay. Velva, no, Elizabeth did not go to Mundelein. She asked a question about Elizabeth Berg. Okay, so there are lighter moments in the book. Thank you so much for bringing up I Close My Eyes. That came out in '99 and led to so many other things. It led to my second book and all my other books, and then a second memoir that came out in 2015. But it also led me to live a really truthful life, and that not to be afraid of what happens to you. and what has happened to you, of how you will be judged or what people will say about you, because plenty of people have said things about me. And just being comfortable in your own skin and your own truth is what that book definitely taught me. But also want to, I mean, there are funny points in the book. There was, I write about taking art classes, which two of my art buddies are on the call. Shout out to Anne Marie and Sherry. We were sketching yesterday pastels by Fullersburg Park. It was quite magnificent. I started taking classes at the Art Institute about Sherry and Anne Marie will tell me, 5 or 6 years ago. And then that turned into plein air oil painting classes, which was magnificent. And since COVID, those classes aren't obviously going on anymore. So we've been meeting every couple of weeks to sketch and draw. And luckily yesterday it was 70 out. So that was definitely a high point. I want to see what I find this. Okay, page 55. All right. This is about those classes. And one of our instructors who we just adored, Mark Crisco at the Art Institute, talked to us about negative space. And that is looking at the places between objects. And those of you who, are artists who have taken art classes know what I'm talking about. So this is a part about negative space. In the white blotches of shading on the gray paper, the spaces between reveal the action and the movement, the solid presence of men and women in the buildings they slide past. When you surrender to observing this way, it is difficult to readjust. The space between a couple's bodies asserts a new definition of what is there. The deliberate position of a roof and an umbrella calibrate a different aesthetic. And I see that the importance of what is not drawn is as important as what is. When I am done, the sketch looks different from one I might have made if I had drawn it traditionally, with outlines and details, filling in shadows. And it's not just because it is white and gray with the objects on the bare paper and the pastels swirling around them. Now the space between has more substance than the objects themselves. The 2 hours are up. Mark leans over my shoulder and sighs, "Oh my, that's nice." He acts surprised by my sketches every week, or so he says, and he looks at them with apparent doting. I find myself longing for his approval, and when he suggests I add a swipe of white or a smudge of green, I do what he says because he's always right. And this is the in-between space where no one knows who I am and no one knows the weighty mess of my 6.5 other days of the week. Today's class has me looking beyond and between everything. Today, I am no one's mother, I am no one's editor, I am no one's mentor, and no one's employee. I do not have to keep quiet on conference calls where I disagree with the directions given. I have no deadline other than the one suggested by Mark, who will call us back to the studio to critique our work. In a painting or a sketch, it's the area between objects, not the outlines of the solid objects themselves. In the negative space, that is the between part, the air, the shadows, the translucent non-presence become animated and hallucinatory, a kind of Warsaw short test of visuals. You discern what is there by examining what isn't. Reorienting to that point of view is a relief, a discovery. The nothingness grows in its own weight. If you draw the negative space, you are conscious that it is a reversal, that it is not logical, that it is not the way others move through the world, reserving their reverence for what is there, not for what is not. But sometimes the objects and the events and the bodies of what bears weight in your view is no longer bearable. You look at the lines between trees and vases and fruit and flowers and lovers for what is important and memorable, and you soon do not see the substance of the weight of what everyone else sees first. The negative space is where you can float. So, I think it's important also to write about what electively we can do to give ourselves joy. And I thought that was important. Oh, here's from my neighbor, Carmela. How would you suggest starting to chronicle the memories? It says journaling help you write. Essays did. Funny, you should ask Carmela. I wrote, my second book was called Writing to Save Your Life, honoring your story through journaling. So I totally believe in that. And, you know, even if it's not just, even if it's not, you know, a journal that you hand write in every day, or if you're just taking notes on your laptop or even on your phone, I think it's really important to honor your own story and to tell your story to yourself, even if you never tell it to anyone else, because it is important to chronicle how you feel and how you're looking at the world and what you're thinking about, not just, you know, emotionally, just like you're brainstorming and your ideas about things. And you can go back and surprise yourself with, wow, you know, that was hard, or I got over that. Because I find that I am not even the same person I was sometimes Wednesday as on Monday. And if I look at things that I wrote earlier, it's like, wow, that's amazing. Who was that? So yeah, I would definitely advise writing. There's Kathleen. Oh, thank you for the ad for my book. Where can we purchase your book? It's actually, well, it's on Amazon, it's everywhere, but go to the book table. We love the book table in Oak Park. We love Jason and Rachel, and there are autographed copies there. And if he runs out of autographed copies, I just go over and sign them. So there's that. And also, if you would like me to sign a book, you can email me your address and I will send you a book plate that you can stick in the book. Barbara, yes to the book table. So I get a lot of questions about the writing process. Is anybody interested in that? If you want to raise your hand or ask about that or writing. Okay. And also, Megan, you said, yes, writing process. Okay. And yes. What inspires you and what you do to find the most rewarding? Okay. So I do not believe in writer's block. Just don't believe it. I used to tell people I write for love and money because I'm a professional writer. I write to pay the mortgage and the ComEd bills and, you know, all those years of tuition. The work that I do, writing books and essays and all of that freelance work is about 25% of what I do. I write, I'm an editorial director of a nonprofit. That's about another 25% of what I do. And then I'm with the Op-Ed Project. So I mentor and train and edit people actually all over the world on that. So I feel like there are two different kinds of writing that I do. There's writing on deadline, and then there's that, you know, that is intellectual, and I use my brain and Google. And then there's writing from the heart, which takes longer, and it comes in phases, and I have to write in layers. So I do write every day, you know, on deadline, and I try to leave at least one full day a week. Sometimes it's only a half a day of writing, my own writing for books and essays, and where I intentionally am, you know, intellectually and emotionally athletic about those things. I'm asking myself all these questions. Sometimes it feels like my writing on deadline is just typing, and the other kind of writing is really digging deep and trying to find answers. So that takes longer and that takes more patience, but I do write every day and do work on that deeper writing as much as I can, probably 10, 15 hours a week on that. And I also, what is really, really helpful is I'm in a writing group, and I've been in a writing group for 20 years. Started with Elizabeth Berg and myself, and we have 6 people in it. We used to meet at the Oak Park Library because we would meet at each other's houses and drink too much wine. we decided we had to go to the library because then they throw you out at 9 o'clock. So we haven't met there, obviously. So we do it on Zoom now. And yeah, it's absolutely marvelous to have accountability. And you can have up to 10 pages a week. And we read our work out loud, we share the screen, and then we talk, everyone talks about it and gives suggestions. And no one's ever mean. No one's ever like, stop typing. But it's so helpful. I learned so much. I don't know how people write and don't have that kind of feedback. We have 5 more minutes. I've been talking nonstop. Is there any other question? Otherwise, I want to finish with something. Sorry, I need to take a drink. Is there anything I didn't ask? Didn't answer? Kathy, I see you. You're.
It looks like there's somebody who wants to ask a question.
Okay. Okay. iPhone has a question. She raised her hand. Okay.
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 I just had a question. I wondered if you missed not having the Oak Park Lake Street shopping available to you now as you did Quintero's and Bramson's and all that.
Oh.
That used to be one of the greatest enjoyments as I was growing up.
Oh my gosh. I worked at Gregory's. That was my Gregory's. Oh my God. $1.65 an hour. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. We had, well, I write about that a little bit in the book about that boss, but yeah, that was fun. Bramson's used to go with my mom. Gilmore's too. Oh, and then
Gilmore's
Weebolt's.
Tea Room. Yeah.
Right. I was a Weebolt's teen model. And when I was like 16, what did they call it? A teen, or it was teen representative or something, you know. Yeah, they didn't pay us. We had uniforms anyway. We had to talk about how great Weebolt's was. Yes, so yeah, but we have better stories there now. Okay, I have one last thing, if you will indulge me. I want to read from the first chapter, and you may I don't say in the book what company it is, but it's Forte Plumbing, so because they're marvelous. Every July, I call the same plumbing company to schedule someone to come out and clear my drains and pipes from the backyard to the front yard and out to the sewer. They were nice there. Everyone from Robert, whose last name is on the truck, to the woman who takes your number when someone calls right back. They have a female plumber. She's in her 20s. She's nice. One of the young men who comes out on a call to fix a toilet or a sink knows my son Colin and wrestled at the high school, as all my boys did. The plumbing team is polite and prompt, and someone bills me instead of demanding a check right then and there. If they come in the house, they put on paper booties to save my rugs. I guess some customers want that. What they do every July is called root incursion, because the tree roots enter the pipes and basically clog it all up. This can be expensive if you let it go too long, and you might have to replace all the sewer pipes. And let me tell you, that is neither cheap nor pretty. It's best just to keep your roots under control. Edit them. The big tree in the front of the house is the biggest culprit. I admit, I have not edited my roots. Our roots grew here in this house, this red brick colonial. I was blessed to live in it all. We each put down our roots and they grew. Thick, gnarling roots, groping, plunging into each other's dirt, tender dirt, mud, and clay. The rainwater helped them spread, sometimes too much, sometimes it flooded. My oldest son, Weldon, has a tattoo on his right shoulder of a tree with colored leaves and flowers, the size of a large grapefruit. He got it a few years back. It's a fairy tale tree, more grim than Seuss, with a firm, thick brown trunk and 4 strong branches, each winding boldly across his flesh with scores of full green leaves. The base is sported with roots that are thinner, but symmetrical and even, closely connected. I asked him if it hurt. So thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Kathy. Woo! Thanks to all of you.
Yeah.
Appreciate very much.
Thank you all for joining today. And of course, thank you to Kathy Aducey for helping us with today's program, despite a very busy schedule, especially these days. And thank you, of course, to Michele Weldon. It's so exciting to have talented local authors like yourself, and even better when we get to gain your insights in settings like this. So thank you all so much. I hope everyone has a wonderful day.
Yes,
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Appreciate you.